so I'm a little bit late, so we probably should get going. Try to help me to not say anything that I shouldn't say because we're being recorded. Might be a blooper in there too, but I can see it's just like church too. Nobody wants to sit up front. So did everybody get a handout? Okay. Also in the back, I've got notepads if anybody needs one and some extra pens. Help yourself on the way out, or if you need one now, go ahead and grab one. The handout that I put together for you today has got two things on it. The side I'm mostly going to talk about today is the side that says health insurance at retirement. If you have a VEBA and or HSA, that's mainly what the topic is for today. On the back side of that, I put the handout we used last month, which is just simply a highlight of the differences between the HSAs, the VEBAs, and the flexible spending or the FSAs. So as I'm going through this, very informal, by the way, my name is Bill Chukuske. I think most of you know that. I'm the health insurance agent broker that works with the county. As I'm going through this today, please, if you have a question, don't wait till the end. Go ahead and ask it, because you may forget it, or I might not hit on something that you want to know about. So to the best of my ability, I'll try to answer the questions. I have to tell you, when it comes to retirement, with health plans in particular, and the savings accounts that are attached to them, the VEBA and the HSA, because at retirement, when you leave, there is no more FSA. The flexible spending is only while you're working, because that's payroll deduction. It's so different by individual, because everybody's needs are different, their expenses are different, their medical condition is different, so everybody's got a different plan, on how they want to, use these savings mechanisms. So, also I want to just let you know this is an example, a recap for presentation purposes only. I did put a disclosure at the top. Quite frankly, your best source of information, because this is all IRS guided, your best source of information is your tax accountant, because one, if you ever get audited, they're the ones that are going to have to be there to back you up, and or your financial advisor if you have a financial advisor. I know a lot of people do, some people don't, but certainly if you've got either one of those two, it's a good idea to just chat with them and find out, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing, how's it going to impact me? Is there anything that you can see that maybe I'm not seeing? Now the good news on both the HSA and the VEBA is, as long as you use them for medical and or premiums after age 65, they're tax-free. So after age 65, you're no longer working, you can use both VEBA accounts and your health savings account to offset your premiums, like with Medicare. Medicare is Part A and B if you're on an Advantage plan. I'm going to confuse you a little bit here, because there's a lot of plans out there. Some are called supplement plans. Those are usually the Cadillac plans. They're very good plans. They cost more money. But the IRS looks at those differently than they do an Advantage plan. An Advantage Medicare plan has your co-pays for well, both of them have co-pays for drugs, but they have co-pays for your medical things, chiropractor, stuff like that. So after age 65, you can use either one of those tax-free, okay? Prior to age 65, and while you're still working, you have to choose one or the other as your primary savings, because you can't draw from both of them while you're working and on a group plan, okay? And we'll talk more about that as we go. So let's first talk about, you're thinking about retiring, and you're not 65 yet. In cities and counties, school districts, we see that it's very common. You might have enough years in at age 56, 57 that you decide, hey, I'm going to pull the plug. I've got other things I want to do, so I'm going to go on. Okay. So first, I'm going to address that group of people. If you're looking at retiring prior to age 65, you've got a couple of options. First, you can elect COBRA. COBRA means you're going to stay on with the county with the plan that I have. And at open enrollment, I can come to the meetings and I can decide, do I want to switch plans? Whatever plans the county is offering, you can stay on through COBRA. And then by Minnesota state law, because you're a public employee, you can stay on COBRA for life. In the outside world, like for myself, if I were independent working for somebody, and I took COBRA, it would only be for 18 months. That's all they allow you to take it, and then you gotta find something different. When you're in a different category, because you're a public entity, you can stay on COBRA for life. Now, most people are gonna find that when they reach age 65, in most cases, financially, it makes more sense to take Medicare, Part A, B, and D, and then buy a Advantage plan or a supplement plan, because financially it's less than paying that full premium that you're paying from the county. The only time I've seen an exception with that is with very expensive medications. There are a few people, handful, there's not a lot, but there are some people that choose to stay on the county's plan through COBRA because of the coverage. Once they hit their deductible, everything is covered at 100%. So depending on where you're at and what kind of medications and all that, my advice is, if you're getting close to 65, you want to find more information out about that, you're kind of thinking, what's my best option? Call me, get a hold of me, I can walk you through that, I can help you with that, or you can go talk to any licensed agent. They won't be familiar with your plans, but they'll certainly be familiar with the Medicare plans, the Advantage, and the supplements. So you've got that choice, you can stay on COBRA. The other choice is you can look at individual coverage through the MNsure marketplace. I'm sure you've heard about that, they advertise it on TV. That came through the ACA law, Obamacare. That's where the MNsure market came about in Minnesota. I can tell you that if you're thinking about retiring, that pretty much means you're over age 55, I would guess. I can tell you the plans on the exchange are going to be very expensive and not as good of plans as you have here with the county. So for people looking at that, now you should look into it, you should find out, but most of the plans on the exchange, as a matter of fact, all the plans on the exchange are high deductible plans, like we have here, but they have a limited network. You just can't go anywhere you want to go, and that's by zip code. So as an example, I live in Tracy, Minnesota. The only plan that I can buy is a Sanford plan. Sanford is contracted with Blue Cross. They're in South Dakota, North Dakota, the western side of Minnesota. If I got sick, I cannot go to Mayo Clinic unless I want to pay the full boat out of pocket. It's not covered under my plan. That's the kind of plans that you'll see in the individual market. So you have to buy whatever their network is there. So for most folks, when they retire, COBRA makes the most sense until they hit 65. Does that make sense? Just because it's a better, the plans you're on now, you can go anywhere you want. You don't have to get a referral. If you decide you want to get an appointment in Mayo, you can do that. So that's a much, much better option to have. The other thing to look at is, does your spouse, if maybe your spouse has coverage somewhere else. Now, some companies allow spouse coverage, some don't. The ACA law, actually, when they put that into place, an employer can say, we're not going to cover spouses. They have to cover children up to age 26, but they can say, we're not going to cover spouses. So you'd want to look into that, because in some cases, your spouse might have a plan that you could get on. Now, in most cases, it's probably going to be added as an age rated, the rate you at your age, but it's an option that you should take, you want to look at all your options. It's an option you should take a look at. The nice thing about prior to age 65, if you do retire, you can still contribute to your HSA, okay, up to age 65. The VEBA would go away, because once you leave employment, the VEBA dollars are only employer-funded dollars. Now, the VEBA account you may have is yours, that goes with you, you can continue to use it. There will just be no more funding into that VEBA. The other thing you want to consider is if you're thinking about, I'm going to turn 65 next July. God, I'm kind of thinking maybe I might just go ahead and retire. If you're kind of thinking about that and you're funding an HSA right now, you should stop funding that effective in January 1st. And the reason for that is the IRS has a 6-month look back on HSAs once you turn 65, okay? So you'd be better off not funding an HSA at all in 2020, because they're going to look back, and if you funded any into that HSA, they're going to charge you a penalty and make you pay taxes on it. So you're better off just doing the VEBA, having money go into there from the county, and just stop funding. You can still use the FSA, you know, because you're still employed, okay? Does that make sense? Yes.
Okay, so let's say they're gonna retire in September or October.
Yep.
Can you put the 3,500 or whatever the maximum is
Then you can do that.
before
Right,
that 6 months?
right, you can do that up front.
So you can do it up front and then.
Yep, yep, because they're only gonna look at the contributions in the last 6 months. Yeah, yeah. So, kind of keep that in mind. If you are funding the, an HSA, keep in mind the VEBA can still only be used for eyeglasses, dental, and of course, if you retire it, then it can also be used for medical premiums. Your HSA can only be used for medical only. The IRS does not consider, prior to age 65, a health insurance premium as a medical expense. Doesn't make any sense, but that's their law. So if you're on COBRA, you could use your VEBA to reimburse yourself for that COBRA premium. You can use your VEBA for medical expenses, eyeglass, dental. You can also use your HSA for medical expenses, deductibles, prescriptions, eyeglass, or dental. My advice to you would be is if you're gonna do that, leave the VEBA, leave the HSA, just let that stay and use your VEBA. Because once you turn 65, if you run out of VEBA dollars, you can then go to your HSA. But the nice thing about the HSA is after age 65, if you decide you want to use that to go on a trip, buy a fishing boat, buy a new car, you can do that. You just have to report it as income to pay taxes on it at the end of the year. Where the VEBA, no matter how old you are, it can only be used for medical. It can never be cashed out. Now, both of those accounts have a beneficiary attached to them, so you can fill out a beneficiary form. We talked about that last month. If you haven't done that, you should get a hold of one. Lisa can get those for you upstairs. Okay, does that kind of make sense? Okay. Now, for the folks that are retiring after age 65, and we're starting to see more and more of that just because of the way things are today. You know, more people are working to that magic number of 66 and a half or 67, some 70, because Social Security continues to increase. So, you know, if you all get your Social Security statements now, it shows you that right on there. You know, if you start at 62 drawing Social Security, much different dollar amount than if you wait till 65, 66, or 70. So we're starting to see more of that with more people. Plus that, we're all just living longer, we feel better. You know, we like what we do, why not keep working, you know? Not that it might be here, but it might be somewhere else, right? I mean, when you leave here, I would venture to guess, at least most people that I know, once they retire from their employment, they end up doing something because, you know, they just like to be active, but that's certainly up to you. Okay, if you're going to continue to work after age 65, my recommendation to you would be do not sign up for Medicare if you're going to continue to work. Now, you can, but it would make no sense, okay? Some people sign up for Part A because they say, well, you know, that's free anyway. The government doesn't charge me for Part A, and then I've got double coverage on my hospital. So if you're working, you know, here, your primary is going to be the health insurance you have here. Your secondary would go to Medicare, the Social Security, okay? That's all fine and good. But once you sign up for Part A, you can no longer fund an HSA, even if you're working. Because after age 65, if you draw anything from the government, even though it's a free Part A, you cannot fund an HSA. You could continue to get VEBA dollars if that's what you do. But truthfully, there's no real advantage to signing up for Part A if you're going to stay on the county plan. Okay? You can waive A, you can waive B. Now, some people do this, and I think it's crazy, but it's their option. Part B is for your doctors, outpatient stuff, those kind of things. The government charges you for that. It's based on income. Most all of us in the room would pay pay the minimum amount, which right now is $144, I believe it is, per month. And that's the amount that the government is talking about. When they talk about changing Medicare, not only can they change the plans, but they're really talking about is increasing that premium on Part B. And that's kind of a scary thought because, you know, it's been that way for a long time. They haven't seen big increases in that, but that's a dollar amount they can choose. But if you take Part B and Part A, now you're gonna pay that $144 a month, and you don't need it because you've got coverage here at the county. So it truthfully makes no sense. So if you're gonna continue to work after age 65, simply don't even go in and, you know, sign up for Social Security. You can waive that. Once you decide to retire, then that is called a special enrollment period, and you can then apply for A and B. Okay, D is the prescription drug coverage. Okay, in that you won't need because you're on the county plan here. So again, if you're going to continue to work past 65, I would suggest stay as is. Don't sign up for Medicare, Social Security, obviously. You don't want to do that. And just continue on as you are. You can continue to fund your HSA. Then when you make that decision to retire, then you can simply sign up for those. Okay, does that make sense? So if you purchase Medicare Advantage Supplement Plan, can use both VEBA dollars to pay for medical premiums. So let's say that you now are you are 65 and you've decided to retire. Okay, you'll have to, again, you want to do that 6-month look back thing with the HSA that I talked about earlier. But let's say you're 67 years old, you decide, okay, I'm going to retire, got all this money in my VEBA, I got all this money in my HSA, and I'm going to go on to a Medicare supplement plan. Okay, now you can use either one of those accounts to pay for those. And again, my recommendation would be spend your VEBA dollars down. Get rid of those because you can't cash them out. So you might just as well use those up over the next however many years, depending on how much you have in your VEBA account. And then you can always tap in to your health savings account or your HSA. Okay. So we talked about, the other thing you want to make sure is that your plan is creditable. There's a goofy law in there with the Part D prescriptions that if your plan you're currently on is not a creditable plan under the ACA law, Medicare prescription drugs, you could end up paying a penalty after age 65 of up to 10% on that premium. Okay. Right now, all of our plans are creditable, so you don't have to worry about that. If we should ever move to, like, let's say the highest deductible plan we could move to would be a $6,550, and I think they moved that up to a $6,700. Then we would need to talk to you about maybe switching plans if you're thinking about retiring, because you want to make sure you're on a creditable plan, because now you're over age 65. If you're under age 65, it doesn't matter. Okay. If you're in that scenario, and again, today's kind of deal is to just kind of give you an overall recap, and I know it can be confusing. If you don't already have my phone number and my email address, grab one of my notepads on the way out. Don't hesitate to get a hold of me. If you've got questions on any of this, if you're in that category where you're maybe trying to think, should I retire, should I not retire, I'm going to continue to work, what should I do? Don't hesitate to get a hold of me, and I can certainly help you with that. Or again, as I said, you can go talk to your tax person and your financial advisor. Most of them should understand those things and be able to talk to them. If you're going to continue to work, I think I already said this, but I want to just emphasize it again. If you're going to continue to work after age 65, by not taking out Social Security, Medicare Part A or B, it allows you to continue to fund your HSA at the max amount plus the $1,000 catch-up. So it really is an advantage if you're going to do that. Waive the Social Security and Medicare, don't take any of that. Continue to fund that HSA, because the more years you can put monies into there, the more you're going to have. Chances are you're going to need it at some point. good news, bad news. Good news is it has a beneficiary. Bad news is you gotta be dead for your beneficiary to get it. But it's, you know, it's your money. I guess the point is, it's your money, so why not fund it tax-free now while you can? You know, tax-free is a big deal. You know, for every dollar you put in, it's really only costing you about 75 cents. If you're, most of us are about that 25%, so maybe more. So it's really a good investment to do. And if you can take advantage of the employer VEBA, we talked a little bit about that last month, there is a way that you can actually take the employer VEBA money, if there's some there and it's offered, you can put that into a VEBA and you freeze that VEBA. You can't use it for anything other than eyeglass or dental, but that allows you to continue to fund your HSA on your own. So there's some ways that you can work around that as well. And again, if you have questions on that, because that doesn't, you know, there's some people take advantage of that, others don't. If you got questions on that, again, get a hold of me and I can certainly walk you through that and help you with that. Again, just a reminder, that 6-month look back, if you're gonna be retiring and you're gonna be 65, you already are, make sure you're not contributing to the HSA. I'm assuming most everybody in here is on the health care savings plan through the state. If you are, you want to contact those folks and find out as well, because they have some different IRS laws that are tied to that impact the HSA, and it has to do with that 6-month HSA contribution also. So I would just check with those folks and make sure that you know, you've got the right information there. The beauty of that is now you've got 3 plans, you know, accounts that you can draw from at retirement, because you can draw from that account, you can draw from the VEBA, you can draw from the HSA if you have all 3. I know I went through that real fast. Is there any comments or questions or any what-if scenarios you want to ask me about?
For the COBRA, is it just you as employee or can you keep family?
Good question. You can keep family. Yep. And again, in most cases, it's going to be less expensive to do that. Just because in the miniature market, it's all age rated. And just because rural doesn't mean we're expensive, but statistics tell them that we are. So, you know, we're higher rated. But yeah, and you can also change that, you know, at any time. You know, there are some people that are in kind of a pickle because it's based off the employee, you know, not the spouse. So let's just say as an example that you're married and your husband is 5 years older than you, okay? So your husband's gonna turn 65. Probably would make sense to look at putting him on Medicare, dropping down to a single. Financially, in 99% of the cases, you're better off that way because of the cost of the family premium. So then you could drop down to a single. The reverse of that some people don't have a choice in is if the employee is 65 and the spouse is 60 and the employee chooses COBRA, 65 and older, he could keep his spouse, his wife, or she could keep him. So you know, there's some scenarios there that you want to look at, because the downside is if you go to the individual market. So if the employee says, no, I'm not going to mess with the COBRA, I'm 65, I'm going to go on Medicare, the spouse now is going to have to find a plan somewhere else because now he or she are no longer employed. So then you're not going to have an option. So what some people do is they sit down, and again, it's a financial thing. They sit down and they look at it and they say, okay, what makes more sense? Does it make more sense to pay the family premium COBRA and just both of us stay on that? Or does it make sense to, and health conditions are going to dictate that, plain and simple. Health conditions will you know, trump anything else just because of the cost. And then every year at open enrollment, you can make that decision, what you want to do. Once you leave COBRA, you can never come back. So that's also an important thing to know, that once you make that decision to trigger that COBRA, then by by state law, the company has no obligation to, you just say, oh, gee, I made a mistake, and a year later, and you wanna come back on the group plan, you can't. Yes?
I went to a PERA planning session, and they had strongly recommended applying for Medicare A when you were 65, to somehow lock in a rate that could increase later.
No, I don't know what that would be, because there's no rate on Part A. There's no cost for Part A. And the supplements change every year. Those prices, they can, every year they go up. That would make no sense. And
That was about a year ago.
yeah, and again, I'm not saying it's, I do have people that say, you know what, I wanna apply for Part A, I feel more comfortable doing that. That's great, just keep in mind you can't fund an HSA then. That's the only thing it impacts.
Okay.
So if you're okay with that, if you're not worried about the HSA, you're still gonna get the VEBA if there's monies available there. So I'm not saying don't do it, I'm just saying that if you do that, they cannot, let's say if you're 65 and you're planning on working to 70, in my mind, even if you're a single coverage, take 5 times, just $3,000, that's $15,000 pre-tax that I just took off the table for my retirement, because I can't fund it any longer. So that's why I look at the Part A as just, why would you do it? But you certainly can. Part B, you certainly don't want to do that, because there's no sense in paying that $140-something when you're not gonna get any advantage of it, because your group plan here is still primary. So question for you, because one of the things we're talking about is that, do you find this helpful? Okay, good. Okay, because one of the things we're talking about, Lisa and I are starting to do more sessions on a monthly basis on different, could be on different topics, but sometimes, you have to hear some of this stuff 2 or 3 or 4 times before, because it can be complicated, and, it's, so, and again, don't wait for that. If you've got questions, get a hold of me. I have no problem with that. I do want to make this disclosure though. If you call me or email me, and I do not get back to you within 24 hours, I'm either dead, or I didn't get the message for some goofy, and in today's electronics, I had somebody send me an email yesterday, and they said, what is going on with your phone? I've been calling all morning, and it goes right into your voicemail. I had no clue. It was something with my cell phone. And then it would tell me my voicemail box was full. And I had no messages in there, so I had to call Verizon and say, so if you don't hear back from me, try again, because it means something happened. But I pride myself on, if nothing else, sending you a text or an email and say, I can't get to you right now, but let me get back to you tomorrow or whatever. Email is usually the best initially, just because you can kind of tell me through the email, here's what I'm kind of thinking about. Could you get a hold of me and we can talk about it? That'll give me some kind of prep on what you're looking for too. Okay? Yes?
So if a person continues to work past age 65, and they do choose to take the Medicare A, you're saying they cannot contribute to the HSA.
Correct.
How is an employer notified of that, or are we not, or, because what if an employee continues to contribute to their HSA and the employer continues to contribute to the HSA?
It's your
What
responsibility.
ramifications does that have in the end then?
Yeah.
Is there gonna be a penalty against the employer for still contributing to that person's HSA
Unfortunately, that's totally on your shoulders.
on the employee?
Employees with the HSA, yep. It's just like with Further, they have these goofy laws. So with Further, who manages all 3 of our accounts, the VEBA, the HSA, the FSA. With the VEBA, Further is by IRS law expected to monthly audit everything that comes in and out. So if you get a letter from Further and it says, you used your debit card at Cenex gas station, that's not an expense, you need to put the money back, or we have to report it to the IRS, and guess what, you're gonna get a 20% penalty, blah, 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 blah. They have to audit that. The FSA, same thing, they have to audit it to make sure it's an eligible expense. With the HSA, they don't have to audit it, it's totally up to you as an individual. So as an example, if you go online and you tell further, and hopefully you've all got accounts set up so you go in and check your balances. You go online and you say, I want $3,000. They ask you one question, is this an eligible medical expense? You answer yes or no. Totally up to you. If you just bought a $3,000 shotgun and you want to reimburse yourself and lie about it, you can do that. You just click yes. They send you the check. They don't care. They don't have to audit it. But if you ever get audited yourself and you don't have a receipt to back up that $3,000, you could be in trouble. Now, you can always plead ignorance, but typically they don't let you do that very often. Same way with payroll deduction. If you decide to take Part A, you don't tell your employer that you want to stop your HSA. Now, the beauty about the HSA, you can change that throughout the year. It's not like the FSA where you're stuck with it. So let's say 6 months into it, you decide, oh, I'm gonna do this. You just let your employer know, don't take any more money out of my paycheck for my HSA. That's up to you to do that. So if you continue to, you take Part A, and over the next 5 years, you continue to do payroll deduction, put into your HSA, and the IRS finds that out, they don't care about the employer. That's gonna be between you and them.
Bill, like notifying our employer, do we notify our HR or do we notify the payroll clerk?
I would do both.
Both?
I'd make sure they both understand,
Okay.
yep, what your intentions are. Yep, absolutely.
So if they don't notify us, the employer, that, no, they don't want the money to go into the HSA, I'm gonna take Medicare A, so I need to go to the VEBA.
You can't put your own money into the VEBA.
No, the employer.
The employer
So
can.
if they're on an HSA plan, and so they get a contribution
Right.
from the employer towards
Yep.
the HSA, but now you hit this mark,
And you wanna do.
and you wanna make that money go to the VEBA instead.
Right.
But if they don't tell us, cause I do
Right.
the payroll, so that's why I'm asking.
Well, and with the VEBA, it wouldn't be payroll then, because that's, and how do they fund the VEBA here in the county? Is it monthly
Yes.
or quarterly, or do they fund it up front?
No, it's not.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, because that's not payroll dollars though. That's county dollars that goes into the VEBA. So if they're currently.
Right, but I'm the one that's
Yeah,
running all that stuff.
Right,
So
so
that's
if-
why I'm wondering, if they don't notify me and I'm still, their money's still going to an HSA, that's not our problem?
right, that's not your problem. You as an employer, payroll person,
Right.
that's not your problem. No, that's totally up to them to do that. It's fraud, yeah, it is pretty. Well, I gotta tell everybody, when it comes to taxes and what you're gonna do and not do, I'm just telling you, what you should do, but that's up to you and your tax accountant. And I'll tell you, here's what's weird about that. When I said earlier how the IRS has this goofy law about medical premiums, when you read that language, it's very, very gray, very, very gray. And you could ask 10 different lawyers to interpret that, and you're gonna get 10 different answers. Same way with accountants. Now, my accountant looks at that, and the way she reads it is, they don't specifically, they're not specifically addressing that, and I don't see it as an issue. The other interesting thing is, it's never been contested. There's never been a case where it went to court and had a decision made on it. So it's kind of an interesting deal, but when you read that, it's a very gray area. But some are gonna tell you no, some are gonna tell you yes. I err on the side of caution. It says medical premiums, that means medical premiums. So it's kind of like at retirement time. I'm not so sure how many people after age 65, unless they're really, really wealthy and have a lot of goofy deals going on. I'm not so sure how many people get audited once they're on Social Security and Medicare. But it's the same way with a supplement. When you read the language, it says Medicare Advantage Plan. You can pay premiums, but it doesn't address supplement. And they're both Medicare, but they're two different plans. So the way you read it, it would say Medicare Advantage only, I can reimburse myself, but supplement I can't. You have to kind of decide that when that time comes, how you want to do that. And again, the good news with the HSA, with the VEBA, if you retire, this question comes up a lot, okay, so I'm gonna retire, I'm gonna pay my Medicare supplement plans out of that. Can I have you just automatically every month send me a check? No, they're gonna want you to send the paperwork in each month. You send the paperwork in, get reimbursement back, that's how it's gonna work. If you're on the HSA, you don't have to do that, you can just pull the money out. Because you don't have to keep receipts, or you have to keep receipts, but you don't have to provide further with receipts.
Bill, you just closed your ears for a minute. As a provider, Advantage is horrible to get paid. And people, it's like, well, hey, this is what right here. And Humana plans, just the hospital needs it too. So again, I talked to other people who used it and what their experience is. I'm just telling you.
Oh, no, I'm surprised I have any hair left on my head. I have more problems since the government screwed up Medicare this year. They took the cost plans away.
Yep.
They brought in the Advantage plans and made them sound so great. And the brochures that you get in the mail, these beautiful colored brochures, don't tell you the story.
No, they don't tell you.
It makes you believe that, oh, I'm only gonna pay $5, or I'm gonna pay this. When you get out that thick explanation that tells you everything, that's where you find out the stuff later. And guess what? You don't find it out. I tell everybody, people will say, well, I don't need that. Okay, you might not need it today. And if you're not using medical today, it doesn't really matter to you what plan you're on. You're just worried about the premium. I want the lowest premium. They got 0 premium plans out there. So I got people that are on 0 premiums and they're healthy, now all of a sudden they get sick and the plan isn't paying like they thought. Well, the first one they call is me, and I say, you remember when I told you if you bought this $247 senior gold supplement, that it would pay for everything, but you wanted the 0. Well, now they got a $5,000 out of pocket max they gotta meet and all of that, and pretty soon it just goes all out of whack. So I thank you for saying that, because
You can't, but I'm your friend, I'm telling you.
in my job as an agent, you know, when I sit down with a Medicare person, I give them all the options and I tell them, here's my opinion, but I'm not gonna tell you which plan to pick. I mean, you have to do that. But I don't want you calling me up in 6 months and saying, you never told me this. Because, you know, that's not the case. Or your spouse gets mad and calls me and says, why didn't you tell Bob this? And I say, well, why didn't you show up with Bob at the meeting? And then I could, you know what I mean? Because there are a lot of issues. And then not only that, the Advantage plans are different depending on where you live in the state of Minnesota. And the prices are different. So it's very, very confusing. And the problem is, once they're locked in, you're done for the year. You know, so you gotta live with that for the whole year. So yeah, it could be very confusing. And then they're talking about, you know, one of the solutions that they're talking about with this whole healthcare thing is just put everybody on Medicare. And I'm like, oh my God. I couldn't imagine what it's just so convoluted right now, you know. And then if you move, you know, the nice thing about a senior gold plan, a supplement, and Blue Cross, when I say senior gold, that's a Blue Cross plan, but Medica and Health Partners and United Health, they all have similar plans. But the nice thing about a supplement plan is you might retire and say, you know what, we're gonna move to Florida. You can keep your plan. You take it to Florida, and it's just like if you're living if you got an Advantage plan, you know, so you're gonna have to now change and do whatever at that. The only thing that doesn't transfer is the drug plan. So if you're on a drug plan here in Minnesota and you move to Florida, you're gonna have to eventually get a drug plan in Florida. You can get by with it for 2 or 3 months probably, but eventually you're gonna have to change that. And those are pretty low cost. The Part D drug plans are fairly reasonable. But it's the Medicare supplement or Advantage. You know. Yes.
Can we switch to a VEBA plan during the year or only at the beginning of the year with our other elections?
Only at the beginning of at open enrollment. So if you want to do that, is now when you would wanna notify them for next year what you wanna do. Yep.
Unless you have a change within your household, right?
Well, no,
A life change, I thought there was.
the qualifying event will trump the FSA, the flexible spending, but it's fairly limited. So let's say as an example, you're female and you decided, I'm only gonna do $500 in FSA and that's for glasses. And, you know, you realize in February that you're pregnant, you're gonna have a baby in July, August, whatever, okay? When that baby's born, that's a qualifying event. You can change medical plans. You can, not only single to family, or I mean, from single to family, but you can change plans as well, okay? And your FSA you can change, as long as you don't go over the max. But when you change that FSA, it's only for the baby. It's not for you or a spouse, so that can get a little complicated. But with the VEBA and the HSA, no, you can't. Yeah, I know.
So technically then, if you wanted to retire next year, if you're paying into your HSA right now, and the county's putting money into your HSA
Yep.
through December, you basically, unless you're gonna get penalized, you're gonna have to work until July first, and then change everything at the beginning of the year, and then work until July first in order to not get penalized because of stuff put into your account.
Right, or just have it go into your VEBA. If there's monies there, they're probably giving you the option where you want it to go, VEBA or
Yeah,
HSA.
starting in January, but now,
Right,
the stuff that we're putting in there now in November and December,
right,
it's still gonna be
right.
in that.
So January 1, you would switch to the VEBA and have it go into the
And then
VEBA.
have to work until July first in order to not get that being penalized for 6 months prior.
Well, when do you turn age 65?
Well,
No, in that scenario.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be turning 65 till next year, but if I
Right.
was gonna retire early,
If you, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. So if you're already 65 and you're gonna retire at the end of the year and you've been contributing to you're gonna have 2 or 3 months there that you're gonna have to, yeah. And it's probably not that, you know, there's been a couple of cases where I looked at it and it really isn't a huge financial hit, but it's just kind of a pain, you know.
Doesn't that just apply if you're turning 6 months before you turn 65?
or is it
Right?
once you're 65, then you still have to do that 6 month back?
Well, if you're gonna, once you're 65, if you're working now, you should plan out 6 months as to when you're gonna retire, and then stop HSA funding, if you don't wanna have any issues with that 6 months of funding.
But if you're 64
Yeah.
or 3 and gonna retire, that 6-month thing doesn't matter because you're a ways away from turning 65.
Right.
If you stop contributing when you retire
Right.
at age 64, it's a whole year before you turn 65, then you're all right.
Right, as long as you stop contributing. So the question was, can I fund it all up front? If you're gonna do that, you might wanna just say, hey, I wanna fund it all in January, February, I wanna get it all out of there, so there's nothing over the next 6 months.
But the county puts in there every month, that's where it's,
Well, but keep in mind, you can put your own money in there.
yeah,
then
you
it
get
ta-
that taken care of, and then they would just be paying the monthly.
Yeah, and then
That'd
you-
be a small amount.
Just tell them, I want you to stop my payroll deduction. I'm gonna get a hold of Further and send them a check, I'm gonna get my credit at tax time, and then just write out the next 6 months, and then you'll be fine. And again, it really is helpful if you've got a tax person, and I've got a great tax person that I can write. If you've got a tax person that you use and trust, it's a good idea to sit down and talk with them. They should be knowledgeable on the HSAs, they've been around long enough. They might not know too much about the VEBAs, so if they don't, tell them you're talking about an HRA. Because even though we have an HRA plan here in the county, the VEBAs are basically just like an HRA. They just work differently because of the way the county funds the HRA. They would be more familiar with the laws around an HRA, and they kind of apply the same.
The look back period, it matters your age or it doesn't?
Well, if you're not 65, it doesn't. but once you hit 65, they're gonna do a 6-month look back. And again, they're asking you that question. You follow me? So they're gonna ask you, when you apply for Social Security, they're gonna, one of the questions is, have you contributed to an HSA in the past 6 months? That's what I said. They ask you that question, so. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just telling you the law. You interpret that however you want to, yes.
But now in no instance will someone have to be taken out of an agency.
Well, currently, it only lists, if you go online right now and Google age 65, how to HSAs, you can Google all this stuff, and you'll get pages and pages and pages. But all they list is medical expenses, including Medicare Advantage plans. So the gray area is because they don't say supplements, it's really up to your interpretation. So I just have to tell you what it's, you know, but that, for some reason, they specifically say Medicare Advantage plans. They don't just say Medicare plans.
That's because they're so cheap.
Not prior to age 65. After age 65, you can't. After. But you should use up your VEBA first before you do that. Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. So quit at 61, I don't know, I think this is what, which year, she said you're at 61. No matter what.
No, it's still 6 months,
No,
I can't use it.
cash in your mattress.
Like the good old days, right?
Honestly,
If you're planning on retiring, but you're